Today we're going to answer a question for you. Is a mechatronics degree a good degree if you want to get into the automation industry? So let me tell you now that the mechatronics degree is probably one of the best degrees that you could potentially get if you want to get involved in automation. Why is that? Well, if you don't already know what a mechatronics degree is, I can explain a little bit of what mechatronics is and some of the things that you'll learn inside of mechatronics, as well as I'll take you into some other potential degree options that will give you kind of the same result. The one thing I want to start off by saying, though, is that the mechatronics degree a lot of times is not an engineering level degree. Now, if you can get a mechatronics engineering degree where it's an actual engineering degree, then that's going to be a very good path to go down, because there are some restrictions in the industry still with some of your major players, like, maybe like a Ford or a Toyota. They're going to want to see an engineering degree in order to hire you for engineering positions. So you got to keep those things in mind, that some doors will be opened by having an engineering degree versus just having like an associate's or a bachelor's degree, a non-engineering degree. So do keep that in mind if you're going to go for a mechatronics degree. In the past, mechatronics degrees were pretty much only associate degrees. You couldn't get a mechatronics degree in engineering. Nowadays, you're starting to see more mechatronics engineering degrees. And I highly suggest any type of actual engineering degree you can get that is also very specifically targeted towards robotics and automation. I think those are great career paths and great career choices. However, finding an engineering level degree that targets those particular skill sets is going to be much harder to find. So if you do find that type of degree, make sure you take advantage of it. So to dive into what a mechatronics degree is, it's a degree that essentially goes over the electrical, the mechanical, and essentially tying those together, and generally involving something like a processor or a PLC or a robot. So mechatronics basically gives you a little bit of skill of each one of these individual things that then gives you the ability to kind of see the entire picture. And the reason why that's very important is because a lot of people will go for an electrical concentration or a mechanical concentration, or I would say programming concentration, but really there's not much programming concentrations out there, at least for automation and robotics. Now, there are for like PC programming and stuff like that. And honestly, like, if you're not going to go into a mechatronics and you're looking to do programming, doing PC programming is probably the best choice to learn programming versus taking PLC, like, I don't want to say PLC classes, because PLC classes are still a good option, right? But like, you're not going to find a PLC only course, or it's going to be very, very limited. And they are growing, and depending on when you watch this video, there might be a lot more opportunities for you college-wise than at the time of making this video. Because even over the past 10 years of me being in the industry, there's been a ton of change to automation programs, manufacturing programs, and automation and robotics programs. There's a lot more options out there. Like I said, back whenever I was going to college, there wasn't even the option to really get an engineering degree. You had to get an associate's degree in like automation and robotics, and then you had to get like an electrical engineering degree or a computer science engineering degree, some type of engineering degree like that, and pair the two things together in order to get like a robotics engineering degree. So essentially I had to get two different degrees. And then, for me and for the instance that I had seen, there wasn't really a good option to overlay classes together where they apply one to another. So I at one point in time looked to go get my engineering degree, because I don't have an engineering degree. I just have a couple associates in advanced automation, robotics, and industrial technologies. And then I also went and I did the electrical concentration and the mechanical concentration. So, whenever I was in school, there were the two options of a electrical concentration and a mechanical concentration, which means all your electives and some of your core classes were targeted towards that particular skill set. And that was the closest option to being able to get a mechatronics degree at that point in time. And literally, right about the time I was ending my degree, the school I was going to actually came out with a mechatronics program, and it was actually part of the advanced automation and robotics program, which is one of the degrees that I got. So I did a little bit of a shift. I went ahead and got that industrial technologies degree, And then I went ahead and picked up a second degree by doing some more of those mechatronic style classes. But I was already going for electrical and I was already going for mechanical. So like a lot of the things that I was already doing, funneling down to what a mechatronics class was. So like I said, essentially it is mechanical and electrical and then programming, right? And again, the whole purpose of a mechatronics class is to give you a good fundamental knowledge of the entire system of an automation system, right? How automation systems are designed, how they're wired, how they're programmed, and how things mechanically work. And it's extremely important when it comes to automation systems because you can't just be a mechanical engineer and be good at automation. You can't be just an electrical engineer and be good at automation. You can't just be a programmer and be good at automation. You have to have a good understanding of all the different things that go on within the system. And also, sometimes somebody like your programmer is telling your electrical engineer, like, hey, these are the things that we need on this system. I need 16 IOs and 16 output, or I need 16 inputs and 16 outputs. And you got to be able to have the knowledge of the electrical side of things in order to be a controls engineer and give that feedback to your electrical engineer. Or you end up in a scenario where it's maybe these people are junior people and there's more of like a project engineer who's kind of helping with the communication between all the different things. Like, hey, I need feedback from this conveyor here. Okay, well, let's go to the electrical engineer and see if he considered any IO for that particular thing. I don't want to get too far off topic, so hopefully this gives you kind of a good generalization of what a mechatronics degree is. It was very, very general. Also, you can check out other YouTube videos that we have that are discussing different degrees. And we also have the manufacturing come up, which also is basically going through individuals. Hi, Carl. How's it going? Can you hear me?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. We're live right now, but we're going to just
Excellent.
do the thing.
Excellent. Yeah. Great to be here. Thanks, Malachi.
No problem. I'm glad to have you. Yeah. But I'm just going to go with this thing since we're kind of already raw. Guys, welcome to the manufacturing come up. We have Carl. Can you pronounce your last name for me?
Carl Doeksen. And I was in Japan last week and I literally just landed back here in Austin like 10 hours ago. So
oh, wow.
Hopefully I'm not, I've had my coffee shot here. I'm getting there. So it's my first trip to Asia since the post pandemic. So it was it was a great trip. I mean,
awesome.
Yeah.
How was it over there? Were you over there just visiting another facility or?
Yeah. We made the pilgrimage to Fanuk to Mount Fuji there, and that's actually my fourth trip to Fanuk. But they're back up and running. Any roboticist needs to make that trip. It is just unbelievable to see the robots making robots. It really is the closest thing I've ever seen to lights out manufacturing. It's the scale they operate at. Yeah.
Do they have like open tourism or something?
Yeah, they have the best way is to get into that is to work through your local FANUC contact. They have a annual private show where they take usually 2-3 busloads of Americans, and I've done this trip in the past, and that was shut down during the COVID, but it will be back up again.
Awesome.
It's amazing, and it's not just amazing from the robotics standpoint, but also from flow manufacturing, and these plants, these lines are just set up to be extremely efficient, and so it's just every time I go there, I learn something.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they have to have the best process flows and best like production processes.
Right. And they're constantly bringing their customers in there. And it was funny. We were asking them about some of the markings on the robots. And they said, oh, these robots with the green tape, those are the robots that are making the robots. Because a lot of people, when they watch the process, they can't tell, which which robots are producing the robots and which robots are being produced, because
Gotcha.
it's just a big blur of yellow
Yeah.
robot arms flying around. It is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to make that trip over there.
Yeah, you should. You should talk to your local FANUC person. They can, I'm sure, get you on the list. They do it once a year. I'm pretty sure there's one coming up, maybe, and they have a limit, how many people they can bring, but
Mm-hmm.
it's worth it to get on that list.
Yeah, I got like one of my visions that I have for like a long term goals. I want to open up like a museum for like robotics and automation, and just
Oh,
have like like my vision is like I kind of want like a office / training area slash museum where it's like everything's like all like safety glass, and you go
yeah.
in, you see motion over your head, like you're walking through glass hallways and you're seeing different
Oh,
servo
excellent.
actuators and stuff.
Yeah, we at three, we'd love to contribute to that museum. We've
Okay.
been around 120 years. We have our own museums, but certainly I've been pushing to get more and more robots front and center when it comes to the 3M and what we're doing on the manufacturing side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because you guys are on the end of a lot of robot arms and performing a lot of different automated applications.
Yeah, it's exciting. We say, over the past 120 years, we've been teaching the human how to grind, polish, deburr,
Mhm.
finish, dispense structural adhesives, apply film, do, box sealing or packaging.
Mhm.
Now, our company, we really understand those applications. So we're teaching the robots, or helping our customers teach
Teaching robots.
the robots how to do that stuff. And it's really exciting. I always say, hey, I work at I got a robot picture on my coat here, but people think of 3M. Oh, you're the tape guy, you're the sandpaper guy. And no, I'm the robot guy.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So what got you to where you're at right now? I mean, you have a super cool position. If I was with another company right now, I'd probably be in a similar position to you. How did you get to where
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
at?
Well, it's a great story, and I get asked that question a lot, Malachi. I was living in Shanghai, and I was on an assignment, like a lot of us, 3M global company. I was the American on assignment in China, and so I was traveling around China visiting customers, and I really noticed that. Very creative engineers, how they would use the robots.
Mm.
And I think my is a lot of that comes from the amount of robots in China, because of the consumer electronics industry. These engineers, they start to move around. They may leave an electronics OEM and go to work for a metal fabrication shop, or somebody that's making knives, or jet blades, or whatever. And anyway, they're very, because of all their vast experience in electronics with all the robots, it's just second nature. Hey, why don't we have a robot do that?
Yeah.
And so whenever my boss would come over from the US, I would bring her to all these customers that using the robots. And it was like a foreshadowing of this robot thing it's coming, and
Yeah.
that was maybe 6-7 years ago. And then it was actually, I don't know, 2017, my boss said, hey, why don't you lead this global robot initiative for us? And I started doing that job out of Shanghai. I was traveling over to Europe, mostly because of the connection into those robot OEMs. we had built some strong relationships in the Shanghai area with the robot OEMs, and we were able to leverage that into, you know, the relationships we have today. And so, yeah, I mean, 3M, I've been at 3M for 30 years. I'm a, red-blooded 3M guy. And it, our company, we have 250 factories around the world. You know, we have our own supply chains that we're automating. So we've really taken a lot of that automation and engineering expertise now, and we're starting to use it more and more to help our industrial customers as well. So it's a lot of fun, and interested, you know, obviously to continue to connect with people in I call it the automation ecosystem. When I was in Shanghai, I got to know one of my mentors is a guy named Joe Gemma, who I think probably anybody would know Joe. And at the time, Joe was running KUKA Americas, and he encouraged me to get active in the what was the RIA at the time, the Robotics Industry Association. So I was able to get elected onto that board, and I've been pretty active in what's now the A3, and then also the global organization, the IFR, the International Federation of Robotics. So that's my participation. It's all because of my mentor, Joe Gemma. If anybody ever wonders how I got involved in those robot associations, that's how that came about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because like that's definitely something that like I even personally want to get involved in, and especially, you know, as I move throughout my career and as we grow as a company. And one thing we're really focused on is like trying to give back to the community. It's like this podcast right here is to give back to the community, and, you know, kind of advise people on their career paths and how to get to a position like you have.
Yeah, that's excellent, because obviously 3M and the robotic associations, manufacturing is so important to our economy, and the future of manufacturing is in automation, and we absolutely need to get the word out, and that's one of the real joys and maybe of my job, is being able to work with people, not just executives, but operators in the plant whose life has been transformed by automation. If you think about somebody that's been grinding welds, and a robot can be a bit intimidating, like, hey, is this thing going to take my job? But it's actually the exact opposite. When that technician or operator realizes that they can troubleshoot, they can operate that robot. Sometimes they can operate 2 or 3 robots, and productivity goes up. Typically, those people will move into higher pay grades, and that's exciting to come back and visit somebody who's now, they're not a grinder or a welder. They're a robot technician.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a really powerful combination for the U.S. Manufacturing industry when you see those pockets of like I said, transforming somebody's life. It's very energizing.
Absolutely. It's like it's much funner to operate the HMI of a robotic system than it is to sit there and grind welds all day.
Right.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah,
You know,
exactly right. And there's so many of those types of opportunities out there. I think that's maybe one of the only good things about the pandemic that I would say pre-pandemic, the American public, especially labor, was very skeptical of automation and
mhm.
robots. And now it's so encouraging to see the press and labor, welcoming let the robots do the dirty work.
Yeah.
That there's a whole sustainability angle as well.
Mhm.
That if the robots are doing the dirty, dull, dangerous
Yeah.
jobs, it frees up the human mind, the human talent for more rewarding
Hmm.
work broadly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm glad, we need more organizations like yours, Malachi, to spread the word, spread the gospel.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, like today with labor shortages the way they are,
Yeah,
there's people that are happy to see automation because the operators having to do two people's jobs because Steve called in today or isn't showing back up to work anymore, and they're actually getting some relief and some break from not having to do two people's jobs.
right. No, it's a win-win right now, and a lot of it comes down to communication and getting those, I think real human um, examples, and that as opposed to just the pure statistics. I always say this, remind my association people, bar charts and pie charts and statistics, and to prove that robots are good for our economy. That doesn't always resonate with people. It's better. Like in fact, somebody just sent me a picture um, from the Wall Street Journal yesterday, an article on automation. And here's a picture of the operator standing next to his robot. And I know this guy, and and it, the whole backstory on that guy is very powerful. And I'm going to encourage the Wall Street Journal people to do a story on that operator instead of, he's just kind of posing in a picture, but it there's a whole backstory on how this guy's life has been transformed, and that's what's really going to resonate
Mm.
broadly
Yep.
with the public
Mhm.
and the manufacturing jobs of our economy. They're so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely going to be much more a future thing, but one thing that I see and I kind of hope for humanity is that we get to a point where automation not only uh, is able to do some of the labor tasks that we have, but I think we're going to get into like some more of like that universal basic income where there's going to be some version of pay. What I think is kind of a good mix is like we work on things we're passionate about. We work uh, maybe less hours. If you're passionate about it, you're going to work how many ever hours you want to work anyway. But I think it's important that you know we're not working as many hours as we are, especially like for like your blue collar workers and those who are having to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week to make a really good living. I'd like to see those numbers go way down and still be able to maintain that same pay. And I think through
Yep.
automation, make that happen.
Oh yeah, automation's the ticket to productivity. And what you're talking about is productivity, which is the magic formula to any successful industrial economy. And this was something I, witnessed firsthand in China. On the other end of the spectrum, the solution to any manufacturing issue in China historically was just throw labor at it. because labor is cheap. We have in China unlimited labor essentially for the last 20, 30 years. But when I was there, the rural migration, the whole Chinese industrial economy was built on people migrating out of the rural areas into the urban areas where the plants were, and that model ran out of gas. And certainly the Chinese economists and the government quickly recognized automation now is an important part of our future. For that reason, they couldn't just continue to throw labor. And then you could look historically at these productivity numbers, where productivity in America has always steadily gone up, and that's super important. China productivity was actually declining because of this ability to tap into unlimited labor.
Yeah.
But it now we're seeing just massive investments in China in automation, and I think the U.S. is in a good position with a head start on being able to realize productivity. And like you said, it is very, that's one of the benefits or the outcomes, is that a rewarding type of job where you use more your brain and not your back, and you get productivity, and you often end up working less hours and making more money. That's what productivity is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And going into that, like, what U.S. Companies kind of have a benefit of, like, our labor rates are more expensive, so ROIs are there. And then for your countries that have the lower labor rates, I think they need to be automating, because I think that we're becoming more of a global economy, and with things like remote working and all that, you're able to start employing people across the world, right? And then after you're employing people across the world, right now they might be cheap, but next year, 10 years from now, 20 years from now there's going to be the same bidding going for those type of individuals from these higher wage countries. And at some point in time, it's going to create a balance where labor is a worldwide.
Yeah, no, and Malachi, you're touching on something very near and dear to my heart. And when I give these talks, and I'll give my little, I always say automation. People ask, why do you automate all this? And I come back to the reason to automate is, number one, improve the safety of a value stream or a plant. That's improve the safety. Number two, improve the quality of the parts. Automation, we've seen, comes with that capability to really improve. And then a distant third is cost, productivity. And I think that whenever we can look at these investments and the opportunities to automate in that kind of a sequence, number one, safety.
Yep.
We are going to improve the working conditions. Automation will improve the working conditions for everybody, certainly the operators. Number two, we're going to get more precise parts. We're going to have the ability to make things that humans can't make and achieve quality levels that humans could not achieve. Focus on those two things. And then guess what? There's going to be productivity and potentially, labor and cost savings, which are icing on the cake. I always say our industry focuses way too much on that third item. And what's the ROI? How many people can we pull out of the process? That, and that's not always real energizing, especially if you're, working in a plant and some new group of engineers comes in there talking about robots and how, you're going to be able to run this factory with no people or whatever, which is never true, but still word gets out, and it just kind of, it's so much more energizing when you say, no, these robots are going to make it a safer, more friendly work environment, and it's going to help us make the best, product, whatever we're making.
Yeah.
These robots are going to help us be the best at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in glass manufacturing, automotive glass, and
Yeah.
that's one of the number one reasons why they're automating. It isn't.
Oh,
Towards
I
the
know.
ROI.
I've spent quite a bit of time in glass factories as well. But did you watch that documentary, the American Factory,
I don't
about
think so. No.
the Chinese glass company that takes over an American automotive assembly plant to make it is really good. It's a really good documentary. It's not that old. It's pre-pandemic, but it
Okay.
really shows you the contrasting approaches to running a Chinese organization compared to running an American organization. It's fascinating. I'd really encourage anybody that has anything to do with manufacturing, watch that documentary. It's really good. And especially, if you worked in glass factories, you would find it even more fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to consuming as much content as I can revolved around manufacturing.
Right. Same here. Yeah, I'm into it. It's so important. And for me, it goes back to when I was a kid. I read the Lee Iacocca, his autobiography. He was the chairman of Chrysler.
Okay.
That turned around, saved Chrysler. First kind of American rock star CEO. But his book, all he talks about is the importance of manufacturing. And it was just drilled into me that if you don't have a solid manufacturing base, there is no service economy. The only reason these service economies exist is because you have a strong manufacturing base. So I hope we've got a ways to go in catching up, but I think America's on a good path right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead. I want to take a little bit of a shift, and I want to kind of get some more information on like how you've came to where you're at in your career, and the fact that you spent so much time at one company, I think that's pretty remarkable and very honorable. What is it that made you stick with one company so long?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, especially in this day and age. It just seems culturally there is a tendency to think that you need to jump, and I saw a really interesting study, a recent one on the Great Resignation. During the pandemic, everybody's quitting. And I think it was a statistic, something like 3 out of 4 people that quit their job, changed jobs during the Great Resignation, wish they would have stayed, with their
existing employer,
previous employer. Right. But it didn't seem like this Great Resignation had a happy ending. That's the assumption I'm seeing. So for me, a diversified company like 3M, I would say I've been, blessed to be able to move around. I started at 3M as an accountant. I started as a cost accountant.
Oh wow!
And I started helping the salespeople with their value selling. They wanted ROI. We called it pencil selling. And the marketing boss said, "Hey, maybe you should work in marketing." And then I moved from finance into marketing. And that was That was wild, you know. I mean, that was, but I had I because I hadn't been in sales, I spent a super lot of time in the field visiting customers, much more than my other peers in marketing, trying to make up for my lack of sales
Mhm.
experience. And then again, I mean, one of the reasons I've stayed with her is because things kept changing, because that led to, hey, you know, you're pretty good at this, you know, marketing stuff. Um, we are working on this, you know, IT, e-commerce, you know. So I got moved into that to run a group of, you know, programmers. And then I was moved over. I lived in the UK, in Europe. Uh,
Well,
that was, you know, again, just, I mean, so I didn't have to change companies to change jobs. That's,
yeah.
I think, one of the benefits of working for a big company. And then later, um, I moved. I worked in Six Sigma for 3 years and went through all the training. You know, did certification, and that's where again I really my finance background, the manufacturing. I just, you know, I'm really into the theory of constraints, the you know, flow. Uh, uh, Process, and Six Sigma was a big part of that. And then, like I said, I had later opportunity um, to also move to China. So I was in China for 5 years,
Oh, wow.
and that was again completely different job, completely different team, and yeah, it. I can't believe the 30 years has flown by. But I would say it used to be like that. You would talk to people work for Honeywell or IBM or, you know, whomever, and that was your career path. It's definitely now it's not the
Yeah, people
norm.
don't stick around. Yeah, people don't stick around anymore.
People don't stick around. But I think, you know, maybe we can learn from this great resignation.
Mhm.
Of course, it's the you know, sometimes called the old economy, but I'm I'm a firm believer that every business, even companies like 3M, you know, automation and industrial software are an
Mhm.
important part of our future. Even
Mhm.
though our core business is always going to be the core, you know, coding, bonding,
Yeah.
products that we produce, but it has to be appropriately augmented by automation and industrial software.
Mhm.
And so for us at 3M as leaders, it's painting that vision and being able to draw talent into the organization, people that can go to work remotely for Facebook or, you know,
Right.
Amazon or whoever. We have to
Mhm.
be able to paint the picture that no, there's a stable future here in manufacturing companies like 3M.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. So
I
that's
think
where I'm coming from.
I think one thing that had a little bit of an impact on people shifting careers is technology and like social media. So like both on the side of like you can experience a company, I feel like a lot easier now. Uh, just like an employee going and looking at other companies. You can kind of see what type of content they're
Yeah.
posting, things like that. Like you said,
Oh,
drawing
yeah.
people in. So there's a lot more drawing in happening. It's also, I think it's much easier to hunt now because I like, obviously like I'm still like somewhat younger in my career. So there's a lot of things like I don't know really what was there 20, 30 years ago,
Right.
but I'm sure like it was much more difficult to find out like who's the global robotics specialist at
Yeah.
3M a long time ago, It's like now it's like
Right.
easier for people to outreach to you and say, "Hey, do you want to come work for our company? Are you interested in entertaining this conversation?"
Right, right. I know it. You're absolutely right. The labor markets are much more fluid and transparent. You
Mhm.
know that the opportunities are there, and I think especially a young person gets offered an increase in pay.
Yep.
Um, that is. That's hard to say no to. Now,
Yep.
I do think this study of I come back to the Great Resignation. The people um, one of it was fascinating that one of their biggest regrets in jumping ship was they really missed their coworkers, you
Mm.
know,
Yep.
and even though it was virtual or maybe in person, um, that was something. And I've studied this too. It's people, a job, you get dangled a increase in pay.
Mhm.
It's very tempting, but
Yep.
the other side of that is when you look at why people change jobs or why people quit, it's hardly ever the pay. It's almost always the their boss, is a jerk or something. That's
Right.
the number one reason.
Yep.
And so I do think that's a testament to 3M. I have had over the years, I've had some very, very good bosses.
Mhm.
Um, and not all of them. I've had a couple of bad ones, but I always kept, thinking about, well, if you move, you could, go from the fry pan into the fire or what have you.
Yeah.
So, everybody's different, and it's that was one of the encouraging things I'd say about the visit to Fanuc. All these Japanese guys, even the Americans, 20, 30, 40 years at Fanuc. That was, that was very encouraging, and there's some similarities there with the 3M culture. So
Yeah.
that was, I think, two example of two great companies that kind of have that.
Mhm.
Uh, I agree with you. I do think on balance, that's a good thing. I think, you can't have, you always need new people coming into the organization, and you need a balance.
Yeah.
Can't just be 100% one way or the other. But
Right.
I think companies like 3M, Fanuc, there's a good balance there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also like extremely important too, like to have experienced individuals in the company because that's how the knowledge transfers over
Right,
time.
right.
And you got to think
Yeah,
like I feel like I know a lot, but also I know that like the me today is going to be nothing from the me 10 years from now. Like the amount of
I
wisdom
know.
that I've experienced from now.
Right, right. I know. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
What
yeah.
what are some of the things that you feel like has gave you the ability to shift and move around within the company to give you those different type of opportunities?
Yeah, I think, for me, I've been fortunate with, great support from my family, willing to
Relocate, yeah.
move and
Yeah.
relocate. I mean, that's one of the things
Hard, like, yeah.
for me. And I know that it's like I said, everybody's different. And I do think that, we'll see in this work from home hybrid economy that's emerging
Mhm.
in the US. I still feel very strongly that, you have to be there. Again, I'm just talking this trip to Japan. We learned things. There's just no way you pick up on in a Microsoft Teams meeting.
Yeah.
And so that is one. I hope that companies organizations, individuals are willing to move, uproot their families, live and immerse yourself in a foreign culture. That's important. And I think there's just another big article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about how the rest of the world, and we certainly saw this in Japan, is back to the office. The occupancy rates in Asia and Europe are approaching what they were in these offices pre-pandemic, whereas the U.S., for whatever reason, is really lagging there. That's still, I think, most office buildings are at 50% or less.
It's kind of mind blowing. We've been doing like sales calls and going to facilities, and we'll get there and be like, "Where is everybody? Is it like vacation? Are y'all on holiday this week?" And they're like, "No, nobody's returned since COVID." And we're like, "What?"
I know, and it's one of the explanations, this expert from like some economist from Cushman and Wakefield or whatever was explaining that, well, in the US, it's really demotivating to walk into the office and it's empty. Nobody wants to come to the office. So it's like, we're not going to bust out of that anytime soon. But, in other economies, other parts of the world, it's mandatory or whatever you want to call it. And when you come into the office, it's energizing, and so guess what? More people want to come back to the office, but it's no fun going into an empty office building either. It's what's the point? I'll just stay at home and go on, Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, you mentioned something before about like just like the coworkers and having like that, like an emotional attachment to coworkers.
Yeah.
And so like a couple things. One, we operate a very remote company, so we basically have employees all over the world.
Sure.
And also, whenever I left the company that I left to start Elite Automation, I was with that company like 7-8 years, and it was a hard transition, like leaving all those people, like, cause these were people we built projects together. We,
right.
You
know
guys,
each other's families. Right.
Absolutely. And so like, and also like, essentially I was starting a competitor company. So like things were very like cool and good. Okay. Do your thing. That's what you want to do. Okay. And then like right at the end, things got kind of weird and like, and so like, it's like really hard for like that like secondary family that you have, like you're transitioning away to starting a new culture with a new team.
Right. Yeah. It again, I think, like I mentioned, all these studies, the money is important, no doubt, but often it's not the most important thing. If you think about, you're going to spend a third of your life or a third of your day, during the week, you want to enjoy it, right? I mean, so that's no fun if you're not enjoying. It makes for a long day.
And every human's different. Like the one thing for me that was like a must is growth. I probably would have never started a company if I just had like an abundant amount of growth. And I was definitely given the responsibility to inject growth into the company and lead things in the way that I wanted to. But then there was still leadership above me that was like not really wanting to do certain things that I felt like we needed to do. And, what I kind of boiled down inside of my mind was that, okay, I can either go and work for another company and see if I can climb that ladder there, or I can just go start my own thing and basically have only myself as a limiting factor to where we take things. And so, that's
right. It's not for the faint of heart. I really, I really admire, and I think, again, that's another unique thing about the American economy, the ability to start new businesses, and how it's the backbone of the American economy, the small, medium-sized
Yeah,
business. It is really an amazing thing, and yeah, we need more. We need
absolutely.
more of that.
Absolutely.
Um,
And realistically, it's like it's pretty easy to start a company and to,
right.
I mean, the hard part is after you start it, but um, it's easy to have the ability to have a door open up, and you can even navigate different routes. You might be an engineer and you start a lawn care company. You know, it's probably an easier
Yeah.
company than an automation company, but
Right. Hey, automation is coming to that landscaping industry big time. That's I mean, so some creative engineers are really going to disrupt the landscaping industry, no doubt.
well, I'm interested to see
It's
this.
it's ripe.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest reasons why I went ahead and pursued an automation company, other than just my experience being in automation, um, is one, automation has the ability to make money.
Hmm.
Then after you have the ability to make money, you now also, as you've grown, built the skill set of engineers that have the capability to do like R&D type of work, to take on some of these other interesting areas of automation that are not necessarily being targeted at this point or not being funded very well. Um, I mean, it's completely endless. I mean, I envision that like Walmarts and stuff, that eventually they stock all their shelves are stocked like a vending machine. Like there won't be
Oh yeah.
any human
Right.
stocking of anything. It's gonna bag your groceries for you. Like it's gonna get to that
I
point.
I I know. I mean, I always like you, Mel. I think about, just think about the people living, 100 years ago in our shoes, and the technologies that were coming out, the ability, the telephone, or whatever it was. I mean, it was, but
Yeah.
you couldn't realize that you could climb into this aluminum composite tube and be in Japan in 10 hours, for example.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't even, it's not even and so you think, now what about these, like my kids, they'll see pictures of me and they'll say, what's that thing on the wall from your, talking on the
Yeah.
phone? Oh, that's a cord, and I think that when I have young children, but when I'm grown up and they're grown up, they'll look at I think the car and see pictures of me say, what's that thing, that round thing you're holding? What is that
Yeah.
for? Because it will, it's going to, the autonomy, level 5 autonomy and all this, that stuff, that will happen. It'll
Yeah.
happen in my lifetime, I'm
Mhm.
convinced.
Yeah.
And so that's just one example of something, but how many other things? What's the
Yeah.
equivalent to getting on an airplane and flying 500 miles an hour to some place on the other side of the earth, which
Yeah.
100 years ago, you just couldn't
Wasn't even
even, the
fathomable. Yeah.
engineering behind that. um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And also to reach like an economical scale where like mass
Right,
population can be able to do it.
right, exactly. The travel, for the masses, it's
Yeah.
very, it's a
It,
very reasonable these days, and it's safe.
mhm.
um
I think it's highly plausible. I just don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, maybe my kids' lifetime, but I think it's highly plausible there'll be affordable flights to space. I think you'll be able to like
Oh
fly to
yeah,
Mars.
right. Yeah. I mean, if that's the science fiction. When I was a kid, I watched Star Trek. And remember Captain Kirk. He had this little thing. It was a communicator. Flipped it open. He could talk to anybody.
Yeah,
And nobody. That was just pure science fiction.
yeah,
How can he do that? There's no cord. There's no
yeah,
network. you know, and that became a reality. So I
yeah,
think too, like that some of these, like one of my favorites is The Expanse. That Amazon series on how Mars is colonized. And they, I've done. It's a very thought out
futuristic. Yeah,
science fiction show, very scientific. How they use the moon as a launching pad to get to Mars, and it's way off in the future, but yeah, space travel is still pretty exotic, but much more common and economical. Like you said, I agree that it's human nature. We're going to get there.
yeah. I This is one thing for me that I think is why it's so important how we like guide how we live as humans and guide what our work life balance is. Like I hope we either like governmentally do it. I hope that somehow like a capitalist system that we can do it, but just really guide like our society to be like conducive to a good positive life, right? Like at this point in time, like we have enough technologies that if we just develop the human resources on Earth towards, making our lives easier, then we wouldn't have to work as much. It's not even about just working as much, right? But if you think about it, if we go interplanetary and we start to spread as an organism, like you want that spread to be like a positive energy versus like being
Right,
ran by like
right.
some dark entity.
Oh, and I think science fiction, it's an important part of and because there's a number of examples. I think the one movie on how not to do it, just like to your point, is that Elysium, with the famous actor Matt Damon, and that technology and automation became a tool for the super wealthy, the super where it's only available to a very small portion of the population. And that, of course, doesn't have a happy ending. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
Was that the one where they like created like the life serum or something like that?
no, that's the one where they create a space station off of Earth, because life on Earth has become it's a scorched Earth.
Gotcha.
There's nothing left. It's just
Gotcha.
slave labor, people making robots on Earth to support these rich people that live up in this paradise in space. And it very I think great movie. Jodie Foster's in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an all-star cast, but it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
But I do think it's and it's extreme. I doubt anything like that would ever happen. However, it is, I think, a reminder that technology, and just like our discussion earlier on how important robots are for the blue collar worker, for the operators, for labor, they're very important. And we can't make this message that automation, robot, it's this elite thing that for rich people to run our factories by remote control. That's not the right message at all.
Yeah, I feel like we really need to define like what we want to do as humans, right? Because like automation can go as far as like sticking a feeding tube down your throat and you're just fed, or going to a virtual simulation. Like at what point of like what we do in our daily life is like a task that we want to do, or like say for instance, like going to the grocery store will be a want to thing. Like if you just want to go to the grocery store, go to the grocery store, right? But
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
have to go to the grocery store. I mean,
No.
already like we
Right,
use like
right.
Instacart and stuff sometimes because optimization of time, right? But at what point in time am I optimizing my time so much that I'm now just like one with the computer, you know?
Yeah, yeah, right. No, I know what you mean. Hey, Malachi, this has been great. I really really appreciate this, and I look forward to working with you and seeing you out and about. I imagine you'll be at Automate,
Yeah,
right?
I'll be
Um,
there.
yep, yep, yeah. I'll be there, and then I'd like to invite you too. We're having last week of July in Minneapolis. We're having a global robotics conference.
Hmm.
We're sponsoring that
Okay.
with our friends at ATI Industrial Automation and
Okay.
then the A3. So
Awesome.
that will be fun for my hometown, kind of be the automation center of the universe for a couple of days.
Awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, we'll be there.
Yeah. Hey, thank you.
No problem. Before you run, do you have any last valuable tips to add to the community?
I just would add, let's continue these human connections. Connect with me, connect with you, and let's do more of this stuff, especially when we're together at events like Automate. It's
Absolutely.
important for us to have these discussions about what's important to our industry.
Mm-hmm.
And like you and I talked about, it's safety, improving the quality of life, improving the quality of the products. It's automation is not all about squeezing more labor out of everything.
Right.
That's not what automation's about, and we shouldn't lead with that.
Mm-hmm.
We should lead with, that's a benefit. That's an outcome of effective automation. So that's
Absolutely.
that's my main message.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today, Carl.
Yeah, anytime. Really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Looking forward to catching you at the next event.
Yep. Thanks, Malachi.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.